These are the warning signs.
Brought about by climate change, one of the most urgent threats facing the planet today.
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you!
Many types of extreme weather are more frequent, more intense.
Rampant wildfires are wiping out communities and bringing unprecedented levels of death and destruction.
Long droughts are threatening crops, wildlife, and freshwater supplies.
Displacing people from their land and homes.
The effects of a warming world are everywhere.
And we are much to blame.
If we don't urgently change our ways of life, you jeopardize life itself.
More than ever, we need an urgent and coordinated response to ensure a sustainable future.
Do not destroy the environment or compromise our resources.
Governments, businesses,
Organizations, you and me,
one small act after another,
can make the biggest impact.
Hello everyone, I'm Mitzi Borromeo.
And I'm Ivan Watson. Welcome to everybody. It's wonderful to be here in Manila, and welcome to the National Museum of Natural History here in Manila, this beautiful building that's hosting
It
this
is. We
event.
have yet to go around, Ivan, and
Yeah.
see the new parts. And thanks to all of you for being here to help us find solutions and how we can be part of the answer to the nation's and the world's problems. So we at CNN Philippines are committed to do our part to help the planet. And this is our one small act to help raise awareness on everything that's happening around us. You all see it. So we want to understand the issues, what's happening to our environment, challenges for sustainable development, and also look at the solutions we can all be part of. And Ivan, you just came from Indonesia. You saw the devastation from the fires.
I just returned from the Indonesian part of Borneo, witnessing the forest fires that they've been dealing with, the massive amounts of smoke and haze that have blanketed cities like Kuala Lumpur and Singapore.
We felt
Real
it here.
challenges, deforestation, contributing to climate change and worsened by climate change. And it's these types of complicated issues that we're going to be looking at for the next hour.
Exactly. There are many layers of understanding, so many things contributing to these problems, and we want to look at that today. So it's time to act now. There's a lot of ground to cover, so let's welcome our guests today. We have a very interesting panel of guests. First, Father Jose Ramon Villarin, President of Ateneo de Manila University. Let's welcome. Hello, Father Jet. He is a scientist who has done years of work here and abroad to help save the planet. Father Jet was a member of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that won the 2007 Nobel Peace Prize together with former U.S. Vice President Al Gore. Welcome once again, Father Jet. Our next guest is Joel Palma, President and CEO of Worldwide Fund for Nature Philippines. Joel led the Pawikan Conservation Project of the Department of the Environment and Natural Resources prior to that. Welcome, Joel. We'd also like to welcome Mark Timbal, spokesperson of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. The NDRMC is the government's lead agency in the preparation and response to natural calamities and emergencies such as armed conflicts and maritime accidents.
Okay, now one impact of climate change is environmental and man-made disasters, is forced migration. And one of our guests heads the leading intergovernmental organization in the field of migration, and that's Kristen Dady. She's the Chief of Mission of the International Organization of Migration. Good to see you here. It provides humanitarian assistance to refugees, internally displaced people, and other migrants in need. So welcome to the program. And our next guest, I'm happy to announce, is Antoinette Toss, an environmental warrior. Come on in. She's also a UN Environmental Goodwill Ambassador and founder of the nonprofit CORA, which stands for Communities Organized for Resource Allocation. Thank you so much, Tony, for being here. And last but not least, we have Maria Victoria Tan, Vicky. She's head of the Group Risk Management and Sustainability at Ayala Corporation, which believes that integrating sustainability into business strategies and practices allows companies to grow responsibly. Welcome, Vicky. Please have a seat. And thanks to all of you joining us here today for our special program, One Small Act, Daring to Build a Sustainable Future. Please take your seats.
So we do have a lot of ground to cover, but let's begin with the facts. I mean, we know the science is clear, so I want to direct this first question to Father Jet. We know global emissions are reaching record levels. We've been seeing the hottest days or years. In fact, the last 4 years were the hottest ever. So we're seeing real consequences of climate change. And at the Climate Action Summit in New York recently, there was a new report released talking about how basically the climate is changing faster than forecast. Can you tell us more about that, Father Jet?
Sure, Mitzi. Well, the science is pretty much clear already. There are some uncertainties like clouds and the ocean, but we have a consensus that it's really warming. And the question now is just by how much. Scientists are normally conservative. They look at warming and they say, well, it's probably going to increase by just 1.5 to 2 degrees. But this recent report, is saying that we are on track for 3 to 4 degrees at the end of the century. Now that's not small. That's serious. That can be catastrophic. And that's because of what we call feedback effects or nonlinear effects. Nonlinear means small change leads to a big outcome. So that's our worry now. And to what extent is the Earth sensitive to these little disturbances that we're introducing in this century and in the past century? In that report, they said we just have to cut back drastically, triple to 5 times the goals that we've set. At the outset, we were quite relaxed at first, said maybe we should peak emissions by 2030, 2040. Now we're seeing that we need to pull back. We need to bring those deadlines even much earlier if we are going to have a safe planet by the end of this century. So I don't know if you want to...
Some of the consequences, and this is dangerous because...
Well, the consequences for us, you've heard, drier droughts, fiercer storms. But for us, I'm worried in this part of the world, the Western Pacific, the sea level is rising the fastest, 3 times the global average. If sea levels are going to rise by 1 to 2 meters, and that's even conservative, that means perhaps we will rise even faster in the Western Pacific. Temperatures are rising the fastest in the poles, but sea levels in this part of the world. And so we should be worried, especially because so much of our cities, our population live along coastal areas.
Say that this is a country that is very vulnerable to the impact of climate change. Very, very vulnerable, and we'll be discussing that more as we go on through the special. Now, the Philippines is also, in addition to that vulnerability, it happens to be one of the fastest growing economies in the world. You have a growing population here that needs vital resources to sustain growth. But the effects of climate change, they pose a threat to that vital growth and those development gains. The Philippines is also a country that is prone to natural disasters, and that makes it vulnerable to food insecurity. So I'm going to turn to you now, Joel, because you've been in the field of conservation for decades now. We're not going to say how long. But I'd like to explore with you how you're seeing the impact of climate change among the communities that you're working with. Where is this most acute?
Well, I think let's put the perspective first. There's an imbalance, as mentioned by Father Jet. We all know we only have one planet. But based on the latest studies on the Living Planet Index, we are already consuming 1.75 planets.
WWF works a lot on marine. Tell us about the coral, because we are at the center of marine biodiversity.
Yes, we are right in the center of marine biodiversity. You know, if Australia, the Great Barrier Reef, would have about 120 species of corals, the Philippines would have 600. So, and this is right in the middle of what we call the coral triangle. Sad to say, you know, a few weeks ago, we've been working with Dr. Alec Wanan, foremost coral biologist, and his latest report is that 30% of the coral resources of the Philippines just died in the last 10 years. And this can be caused by climate change, the sea level, the temperature rise in our sea surface temperatures. It can also be because of the water quality is degraded and so on and so forth. So just 10 years, 30%. So we're not even talking like with climate like in the next, by the end of the century, but this is like happening in our very eyes.
Yeah, so we're seeing that climate change is posing a lot of global challenges. There's also poverty, inequality, a lot of problems. And that's why the United Nations has set 17 sustainable development goals to achieve a better and more sustainable world. So I want to ask, Christine, can you tell us more about these development goals?
Sure. The Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 of them, which the Philippines has, of course, adopted and signed on to, is really the blueprint to end poverty and protect the planet and also ensure peace. And so in terms of poverty, the poverty numbers have come down really quite well. But when it comes to protecting the planet, we're, as you saw last week at the Climate Action Summit and the recent reports that you were just referencing, we are in a very dire situation. The Secretary General is now calling this a climate emergency, and we need really urgent action now.
So much more to discuss. We just have to take a quick break right now. This is a CNN Philippines special presentation, One Small Act, Daring to Build a Sustainable Future. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the CNN Philippines Forum, One Small Act, Daring to Build a Sustainable Future. Extreme weather events are increasing in many parts of the world.
I am based in Hong Kong, and I just spent time reporting with meteorologists there at the Hong Kong Observatory, which has been functioning for about 135 years. And they are all warning that due to warming temperatures there, due to rising sea levels and rising temperatures of the sea, they are anticipating that the storms, the typhoons that they face will be getting worse in the years ahead. They are anticipating that there will be more threats to that very densely populated city. Now, one of the first times I really firsthand as a journalist witnessed the devastating power of one of these storm systems was here in the Philippines. It was after that tragic storm, Haiyan, Yolanda, and the devastation that it caused in Tacloban, with thousands and thousands of people killed and many more made homeless. Mitzi, you've been reporting on the ground here about the threats and the dangers caused by extreme weather as well.
Definitely, Filipinos know the problems. We see the rain, we have worse storms here. I mean, the heat, the summers were really prolonged. So I think everyone here has a story to tell about how climate change is affecting them. And in fact, before Yolanda, there was Ketsana or Ondoy. This is what was a game changer for the Philippines. In fact, it's the 10th year anniversary of Ondoy this year. I mean, many of us were affected in Metro Manila. I mean, I remember I was stuck out on the highway in a flood and I couldn't move. So that was 10 years ago. I'm sure you all have your own story of that time when Tropical Storm Ondoy ravaged Luzon, in fact submerging Metro Manila and other areas in floods at record-breaking levels. Remember, in just 6 hours, we had about a month's worth of rain. I mean, it was just the first time we've seen that, and many people are still suffering from trauma from that. In just 6 hours, Ondoy released rainfall equivalent to a month's volume, and 23 provinces in Metro Manila were placed under a state of calamity. And this prompted renewed attention and response from agencies like the NDRMC. So I want to ask Mark, what were the big lessons learned from this, and how did this change how you work in the agency?
Before Tropical Storm Ondoy, there was no NDRMC. it was still the National Disaster Coordinating Council. And, well, there were forecasts about Ondoy, and preparations were made during that time. However, the impact, I guess, and the magnitude of Ondoy wasn't actually what we expected during that time. And the negative impact of this emergency served as an eye-opener to the Philippines, especially to government. One of the positive things that were born out of the Ondoy experience was the passage of our landmark Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Bill, or RA 10121. And this created what we have now as the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. As part of the lessons that we have learned from Ondoy, you're right when you said that everybody was affected. Even the people who were supposed to rescue the people who were affected by the storm were themselves victims. I myself was a victim during that time, although I wasn't with NDRRMC and DCC yet. What we learned is that what we have to do is to coordinate disaster response, not just during an emergency, but way before the occurrence of an emergency. The Philippines adopted a proactive stance in disaster management after Ondoy.
Tony, you work with a lot of communities by the water. Can you tell us about some of the work or the people you've been meeting with your work?
I actually really wanted to emphasize as I began that this is really a climate emergency. And we need to make sure that everybody remembers that when we speak of this, it's not just about climate change and the environment. It's exactly what you said. This is about saving lives. And not just human lives, but all life on Earth and the planet itself. And in this climate emergency, it is also important to remember that the people most affected are those living in poverty. They are always the ones that will become the greatest victim of this occurrence. Greenpeace has even declared the Philippines the center of climate change in the world for the effects of it, not because we are contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions. That's even become an argument. And the thing is, my point there really is, it's not about what we're contributing. And I feel like one of the most powerful issues here is the fact that we're so disconnected from problems when it's not happening to us. And I feel that empathy is a huge aspect of really creating change as well. When I speak about mental health, I always speak about the fact that empathy and depression somehow connected me to what might be happening to other people across the world. That if I'm feeling this dark and this sad and this lost, what more the ones that are going through so much more and suffering? And I feel like the second issue that we need to fix truly is us thinking that we are powerless as individuals. I really, really, truly like to emphasize the fact that we all have the power to make change. And I feel that the reason I'm saying this is because I've always seen myself as a late bloomer in this whole realm, because growing up, I wasn't raised an environmentalist. I was raised by my mother, my parents, to love people, to really give if you can, help whenever you can, no matter who it may be, at whatever cost. And the thing is, for me, that was the thing. Let's try to be good people. Let's try to do good for the world. So a few years ago, seeing all these campaigns by the United Nations, I ended up educating myself online through all these campaigns. And it took us 2 years to even begin starting making a move. And my friends and I were talking about, what can we do? And the first thing we really wanted to do was feed children. And 2 years we talked about it. Finally, it happened because we said, you know what? We don't know the first thing about this. We have friends in the United States that are doing this easy feeding program where you can just do it yourself with friends. Let's do that. And from there were so many realizations about the Sustainable Development Goals. Number one was food waste. So we were utilizing a lot of food wastage from companies that had excess products that were not expired but were unsold. And when we talk about food wastage in the world right now, it's really sad to think that every single year, 1/3 of the food we produce globally is wasted and thrown away. And just 1/4 of that whole entire 1/3 wasted can already end world hunger. So that was just unbelievable to me. Like, we talk about hunger and helping people and feeding the world.
I think that gets back to the 1.7 planets being consumed that you were talking about earlier,
Yes.
Joel. And I think there's a great role for grassroots activism, which you're so deeply involved in. If I may turn, Father Jet, to a more macro approach to this. You've been involved in this for years now, these questions of climate change. How have you seen governments tackling these challenges? Where have they made leaps forward? Where are they sadly falling short?
Some governments have made significant strides in restructuring their economies. And by that I mean energy, for instance. If we are going to respond to this crisis, we will have to look at the way we grow. And before this erupted, this issue, the way we've grown is we've burnt fuel that has been buried for millions of years. We've just mined these things and we threw it into the atmosphere. So we've learned that we shouldn't do that. It's not been easy because that's how we've grown for the last 150 years. But there are governments now that are being serious. For instance, I think the UK, at least this third quarter, I am told, the share of renewables has surpassed that of fossil fuel. Germany attained that a year ago. And so there are countries that have decoupled their growth they've decoupled it from carbon. And that's happening, albeit just, still small steps. But we're still hopeful that the big countries like the United States, China.
He looks at me.
Sorry. The big spenders, will finally do something.
Later in the forum, we're going to be taking a look at how businesses can play a big role, not just governments, not just grassroots. We'll be talking to Vicky about that in addressing climate change and helping promote sustainable development. So please stay tuned. We're going to be right back after the break. Welcome back. You are watching CNN Philippines, and this is One Small Act, Daring to Build a Sustainable Future. And we're broadcasting from the National Museum of Natural History, and we are grateful for their hospitality here on this fine afternoon. Now it's time to talk business, all right? Business, it plays an important role in addressing the challenges of climate change and sustainable development. In the new climate reality, businesses that can innovate and take advantage of the low carbon transition are likely to be in the best position to secure a sustainable future.
That's right, Ivan. Innovative initiatives from business are part of the global shift that can open the floodgates to large-scale opportunities that can combat climate change and change the lives of millions around the world. And one of the companies with that mindset is Ayala Corporation.
Okay. Right, and Vicky Tan is here. We finally get a good chance to talk to you now. You are the head of Group Risk Management and Sustainability at Ayala. And you all should know that Vicky was recently recognized as one of Asia's top sustainability superwomen by CSR Works. That is an annual listing of exceptional female sustainability and leaders in the region. So we're very happy to have you here. Now, Vicky, one of the key questions that I want to ask about is this delicate balance between economic development, growth, jobs for people so that they can put food on the table for their families, and then conservation, protecting the environment in the long term. That is a very difficult balancing act. Can you tell us more about strategies, how to handle that, so we don't destroy the future in the long term while giving people at least some short-term help?
Actually, sustainability is not just about environment, nor social, nor economic. It is actually a balance of all of these three. In a degraded environment, no businesses can survive. In a socially, if there is social inequity, again, businesses cannot survive. So we have to strike a balance on these three. Now, in Ayala, we have our definition of sustainability is CSV, or creation of shared value. What is that? It is looking at all the societal challenges and gaps, and within our resources, within our capability, we have to come up with what we have been referred to a while ago as innovative solutions. And then we have to bring that up to a business model and bring it up to scale, because if there is no scale, the impact will not be significant. As opposed to a CSR, corporate social responsibility, which is just like tree planting, feeding. They are all good, but the impact is not that significant. What we want to have is to improve the lives of the many stakeholders that we serve, and that is through a business model. Why business model? Because in CSR, there is only one department executing the program or initiative, whereas if you have a business model, it is the whole organization towards that goal of improving lives of the Filipinos. And then also in CSR, that is just a program. And here, you have a business model. And if you make it up to scale, it becomes sustainable. And you know, anything, it is not good, it is not bad to make a profit. You need profit for you to continue innovating, to continue improving your services, and to continue improving lives of the Filipinos. And I think in reference to the SDGs, we have our own sustainability blueprint that we launched last year. That was a result of 3 years' work, groundwork, listening from our stakeholders, what are the things that you need, or it is not about us, it is what the stakeholders need and how can we help them.
I want to bring in Tony because, of course, businesses work closely with environmental warriors too, and a big problem in business is plastic. You do a lot in plastic pollution.
Yes, so a lot of the work that we do at Cora, once again, it's all about volunteerism. So as human beings and citizens of the world, to us, we're not experts, we're not scientists, how can we do our part? And it started simply with picking up plastic on the ground, and now we do a number of coastal cleanups. We're trying to do campaigns to really educate everyone about the effects of plastic pollution. But as we talk about the effects of plastic pollution, we also have to remember that we are cleaning the coasts, but it's only a temporary solution. We've been cleaning the Las Piñas Parañaque Wetland Park for about 2 years now, and people have been asking us, has there been a difference? And the reality is there really hasn't. The Philippines throws away 163 million plastic sachets every single day, 48 million plastic bags, 45 million thin film bags, and 3 million diapers. And a lot of these we see washed up there. And it's not necessarily from that region. It's from different areas of the country, and it's from the esteros, from the rivers. When we spoke about the people that have to come to Manila to find jobs, I was with the late and amazing Gina Lopez in one of the esteros recently, Estero de Magdalena. And she was telling us when we were speaking to all the people that have to live here in this pollution are all from the most beautiful parts of our country. But they need jobs, so they all flock to Manila, which is a never-ending effect. But we cannot just blame the people for this problem. As much as we are the third top polluter in the world for plastic pollution, we still want to say that the real way to fix this is to stop it at the source and to really give better measures. People want to do better. People want to make better decisions. But if the options don't exist for recycling or better packaging, or packaging that's actually biodegradable, and we believe that as corporations, we need them to really be responsible for the things they produce. The same way we tell people, if you're going to buy something, throw it away properly or recycle it. We also want to tell the companies that if you're going to make something, please also think about the effect of that on lives and people. 100,000 marine creatures die every single year from plastic pollution, over 1 million seabirds, and right now we're just beginning to learn the effects of plastic pollution to the human body.
Joel, I think you have statistics for fish, overfishing, what's going to happen between the volume of fish and plastic.
Well, there's projection right now that for every kilo of fish in the ocean, for every 3 kilos of fish, there's 1 kilo of plastics. So, no, in the ocean. So it's quite substantial. And if we don't do anything about it, by 2050, we will have more plastics in the ocean than fish. But again, I would like to emphasize that it's not only plastics in the oceans, but also plastics in nature in general. You know, I just read an article 2 days ago that the worms that are very important to fertilizing the soil cannot process the soil because of if there's plastics in the soil. So the campaign right now of WWF globally is not just plastic off the oceans, but we should have no plastics in nature.
We will look at more sustainable solutions and how we can all take part in building a sustainable future. Welcome back to One Small Act, daring to build a sustainable future. Climate change is the central issue of our time, and now is a defining moment to do something about it. There's still time to tackle climate change, but it will require an unprecedented effort from all sectors of society. Now, I will direct this question to Father Jet, since you are a part of many climate change bodies internationally and also here in the Philippines. The Philippines is a signatory to the 2015 Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and this document aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and keep global temperature increases below 2 degrees Celsius. And as a signatory, the Philippines promised to cut back carbon emissions by 70% by 2030. But earlier this year, President Duterte said that UN climate conferences are a waste of time and money. And this was followed by a comment by Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin on social media, and I quote, "I am rejecting all official participation in climate change conferences requiring air travel. We'll just vote yes to radical proposals, no more talk," end of quote. What is the situation? What would you say to that, Father Zed? What happens if we are not in these negotiations?
Well, yeah, first of all, I think it's sad. It's short-sighted. I mean, we might be small, but then that discounts the fact that small nations can come together and become big. For instance, the small island developing states, SIDS or AOSIS, these are the small nations like Tonga, Vanuatu. These are small island nations. Their power is moral. And that's important because the UN listens to these nations. And if we're going to disengage, that's sad. We can lead. And we have led before.
I think there's a really important message here. We don't just want to scare everybody and make people hopeless. We do want to talk about ways to build hope and potential solutions. Joel, let me turn to you on that, and maybe we can follow up with Mark. Do you have some examples of some innovations? Do you have some examples of some concrete things that you can point at that we can all reach out and touch that you think are successful, that can build hope for communities moving forward?
Well, I think the essence here is one small act. You know, it doesn't have to be very high-tech or something. You know, we work in the watersheds of Ipo Dam, and this is where 97% of the water supplies Metro Manila together with Angat watershed. And you know, the technologies that, quote unquote, we apply is that we work with the indigenous peoples. They know better than us. I think that's very important. You know, they always say, "Oh, here comes the NGOs, the bingos, the big international NGOs. They have all the solutions." No, the solutions are actually on the ground. They know better than us. So that's very important because they know better where they are. And I think this is where we should be pointing ourselves. We have done so much of top down. We need more bottoms up.
What about the role of academia, science, technology? Where could we see research communities bringing potential solutions? You are the president of a university. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I was about to say that my one small act is that I work in a school, which is, I'd like to believe, is a nursery for leaders. And I think part of the crisis is that we've looked at these things at piecemeal. We've segmented our view of reality. And so in a school, you hopefully change cultures, you change mindsets. I'm hoping we can form more Greta Thunbergs who will be bolder, who will be creative. From the Philippines and from elsewhere. But, so anyway, yeah, in school, in terms of research, in terms of ideas, We're looking at learning from our own indigenous traditions, at the same time working more closely with people, really on, in my own little, I'm like a little mayor. So I introduced electric vehicles, or even I just built sidewalks, because something so simple as walking. I mean, I try to make the sidewalks nice, you know.
Yes, very important. We need
to encourage walking. But still, it's not easy. As you know, the traffic problem, crisis is
emergency
not just
levels. Right?
and it's also affecting us. But again, here, we'd like to look at public transport solutions. And I hope that our own academics can do the hard thinking, because these are systemic things. You know, you have a lot of efforts, but then you know that things keep returning, bad things keep returning. In a way, they're resilient,
Yes.
they're enduring, and so we have to look at why do these things keep coming back? Poverty, malnutrition. Why can't we make a dent? And I think that requires some some hard thinking.
Well, since you started it, Father Jet, we want to ask everybody here, you know, what is your one small act that you're doing or you'd like to do more of to help build a sustainable future, Joel?
Do you know that here in the Philippines, we waste as much as 300 metric tons of rice a year? This is coming from the Department of Agriculture. If we don't waste rice, which the average is 2 tablespoons of rice, we will save 300 metric tons of rice that we have to import from Indochina. And that's a lot. And at the same time, 2,100 metric tons of food waste is generated in Metro Manila alone every day. So just finish your food.
Don't leave any rice on your plate.
Yeah.
Really something to think about there.
Very simple.
Thank you, Joel. Mark, do you have any suggestions?
I have 2 small things, 2 small acts. First, I attended this activity, and this small act reflects compliance and obedience to the invitation. Why? We have lots of laws. We have the Clean Air Act. We have the Ecological Waste Management Act. If we just comply, that's at the basic level. We take care of the trash, we segregate, we reuse, we recycle. There wouldn't be any great problems when it comes to waste management. And second, another small act is, and I would like to tell our students here, our guests here, for you to speak up. Speak up. Government is not, how can I say it? Government is not omniscient, that we know all the solutions to the problems. As you can see every day, we have lots of problems. Government is doing a lot to address those problems. Your taxes are being used so that we drain our brains so that we can find solutions. But if you have great ideas, why don't you tell it to us so that we can check if it's going to work out? We are a country of very creative people, and that's what we need to do. We have to share the knowledge that we have. We have to work together. What you can do, what we can do, if we put it together, it would be a lot.
Yes. Christine.
Okay. I have a lot of acts, but I think we at IOM really felt like we had to lead by example because we're busy telling businesses what to do, people what to do, and so we thought we really actually need to look internally at our own office here in the Philippines. And so we have our IOM Philippines team here, and the green team we call them, and they came up with a great campaign, and it was called Green It Up, because everybody talks about stepping it up. We talked about greening it up. So in our office now, we are committed to being plastic-free by 2020, and that means our vendor agreements, we no longer will allow them to have plastic packaging or catering that has plastic. Our office is now plastic-free. Any event we have in our office is plastic-free. We're really scrutinizing air travel because air travel is it's one of the biggest polluters. Believe it or not, in the Philippines, we've even committed to going half vegetarian. So half the meals on events have to be vegetarian. Morning breaks, afternoon breaks, vegetarian. We have to change our eating habits. I think I need to just emphasize what the UN is saying, what the Secretary General said, is that we actually need really radical change in our lifestyles. And it's a bit painful at times. So you have to look at the way that you're eating, the way that you're emitting, the way that you're traveling, the way that you're just consuming. And until we do that, and thank you to the youth who's actually called out my generation for that, because it's the youth that are actually holding us accountable, and we have to listen to the youth.
Exactly, good points.
Tony, you were telling me earlier that the UN has proposed 10 acts, but can you tell us one that you would propose to our audience?
Actually, they're super simple. I can just breeze through them real quick. It's just basically telling everybody that we can work through partnerships together. If we work together collectively and everybody believes in their own power to make a difference, so much can happen. It was mentioned earlier. If we all drop a piece of trash, can you imagine if every single person did that? But if we all picked it up or didn't litter in the first place? So it's easy. Simply recycling, reducing your food wastage, switching to plant-based meals, supporting sustainable and local fashion, choosing more eco-friendly ways of transportation or walking. A lot of it is even energy consumption, unplugging, turning off the lights. And I think people get intimidated by thinking we have to do it all and be extreme. And I feel like that's why many people don't begin. But we have to remember that everything has to start somewhere in just small ways. And my favorite quote is by Dr. Seuss. Today you are truer than true. There is no one alive that is youer than you. And if you were created to be so unique and special in your physical form, then how can you not have an extreme power inside of you to make a difference in this world? So we have to remember that you have the power. We all have the power to make a difference. Whether you're a lawmaker, you're a businessman, or we're humble citizens of this planet.
Well said, Vicky.
It's difficult act to follow.
She quoted Dr. Seuss.
Right. Probably since I'm heading the risk management and sustainability of Ayala is to integrate the two disciplines and to help organizations to become more resilient and more sustainable. And let's live up to the value of improving lives. We want to see a Filipino who has access to their basic needs by 2030, he is more productive, not stuck in traffic, who have access to financial services, and later on, as we are talking about waste, someone who knows how to manage their waste effectively. At home, I'm doing, I hate waste, so that's one thing. So reduce waste, that's one. Segregation of waste, and I think some of you would know, Father Jets probably would know, that waste actually contributes to climate change, to GHG, that actually contributes to climate change. So my advocacy, integrate risk management and sustainability.
You see, there's so many ideas there, and there just isn't enough time to share all these solutions. I just wish we had more time, but what I'd like to ask all of you is to do your part. Let's share our stories. Let's keep talking. Maybe we should do these forums more often, but from wherever you are, even whatever part of the world you may be in, share your stories, share other people's stories, and please do tag us on social media, #OneSmallActCNNPH, because maybe by learning more about these stories, we can also share solutions with other people, and every small act makes a difference. It makes a monumental difference. So at this point, we want to thank all our guests. Thank you again for being here. We want to thank you all for sharing your time with us again. We want to thank Father Jet Villarin, scientist and president of Ateneo de Manila University, Joel Palma, president and CEO of WWF Philippines, and Mark Timbal from the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council.
Also, I'd like to thank our guest, Kristen Dady, Chief of the Mission at the International Organization for Migration, Antoinette Toss, the UN Environmental Goodwill Ambassador, who quotes
We ask you
Dr.
to stand
Seuss,
up and come forward.
and Maria Victoria Tan, Vicky, Head of Group Risk Management and Sustainability at Ayala Corporation. Thank you very much to our guests today.
And to all of you here at the National Museum of Natural History in Manila, thank you so much once again for joining.
And thank you as well to our partners as well for making this event possible. This has been a CNN Philippines special presentation, One Small Act, Daring to Build a Sustainable Future.